You have government spending, which they recognize the need to fund these programs in certain states. You have funding for the 3 and 4 year old kids, which the preschools receive part of their funding. It's like a voucher that's given by the government to the parents, and they can use that as form of payment. Also, other drivers are disposable income, which has been growing for the last 10 years or more. National unemployment rate as well. Now with COVID, things got a little bit different, but for the past years, we've seen that developing positively. And also, the most important one, I think, for this industry is the importance of early childcare development and the impact.
Yeah, what's the benefits? Because you have some people that just one of the spouses will take some time off work, a sabbatical, to take care of the kid or hire a nanny. So why is it important to focus on the educational aspect from 0 to 4?
So that's kind of what we worked on, to understand what the real impact and how we would add value to everyone, from children till the country. So there's a gentleman named James Heckman from the University of Chicago. He's a Nobel Prize winner, and he created a lot of research in econometrics, understanding the impacts of early childhood education. So I'll tell you some of the findings, and some of the research are quite interesting. And he says that, first of all, after analyzing these kids for decades, it provides a more stable home for their kids. You have a higher completion of high school. You have lower rates of addiction and arrest and crime.
Wow.
Most of these kids that go to preschool, they're inclined to have a full-time job or be self-employed, be an entrepreneur. And he calculated the return on investment to be about 13% per year return if we invest in children. So there's significant results in better behavior, education, help, employment, versus not attending such a program. You have
the kids age 2 or 3 years old. I mean, it's going to change their life, and the opportunities that open up or close.
Yeah. So you have to think of how we wire their brains. Literally, like, it's like riding a bicycle. I'm trying to think of an analogy here. It's like riding a bicycle. You learn it at an early age, and then it's kind of embedded in you, right? That's how you wire someone's brain. And these kids, when they're like 1.5 or 2-year-olds, they're already, you give them an iPad, they can go through, put the code in, go in. We never thought they would be capable of doing those things. So we definitely have to wire these kids properly from beginning, because it will help them ride their bicycle, or with balance, equilibrium, etc. later on. It's kind of the analogy I think of, right? So multiple studies have been out there, and as time goes by, we find more of them, which are interesting. You have the Journal of American Medicine. They say that they followed these kids for 25 years, and very tied correlation to success. Cornell University, one of the major universities in the U.S., they say that for every dollar spent in the childcare sector, it equates to a broader statewide economic impact of about $2. That's the double, right? So there's a number of factors here that are positive. There was also a study from Frank Porter Graham Child Development Center that long-term achievements in education, cognitive skills, language ability, math skills, grade retention, and social engagement are long-term effects, actually, of being in a childcare program. So when like, just going back a little bit, is when we initially started looking at this, we were very excited about the fact that we could change children's lives.
Yeah, it's huge. Yeah. And recent election, how do you see Joe Biden's policy and his administration affecting Amazing Explorers Academy and the larger industry?
Well, I won't delve into politics.
Sure.
But I believe both presidents and both presidents, either Trump or Biden, are capable of understanding the importance of education and continue with the program. Trump did some increases in expenditures for these programs, and I believe, and I did have a conversation with someone that's from Biden's administration.
Great.
And understanding that for them as well, it's something that they're going to pursue. I don't know exactly how things are going to change, but I do believe there will be more investments in education, and I think that's just a natural tendency of things. The country is only good as the people that are here and how educated they are. It's the bottom
For
line.
sure. Yeah, it's largely a service-based economy, and it's not agricultural like many years back where education maybe doesn't matter as much.
Yeah, so we have we think of three levels of education, right? Manufacturing, to a service, to an intellectual. And I think we're moving to the intellectual, and for that, we need to be prepared.
Oh, yeah. And tell me a little bit about the competitive landscape. Like I alluded to it, you have some alternatives, even some churches, I believe, that offer preschool, early childhood education services. What's the competitive landscape like?
So there are daycares, which let's categorize. What is a daycare? Daycare is basically
Exactly.
you leave your child without education. And then a preschool is naturally where you embed some form of curriculum and you teach kids and you develop kids, right? There's a development component. In the United States, you're talking about 670,000 schools, right? And I would say that about 50%, 65% of them are large daycares, right? So you're talking about that $55 billion industry. There is competition, but the market's extremely fragmented. They don't represent 5%. The top preschools and the larger preschools are just a small factor of the market. So there's a huge the market's fragmented, and there's really low market concentration.
So for example, when you open up a preschool, like, are the students, say it's a 4-year-old that was already at some type of early childhood daycare or preschool, where are they coming from?
Well, there's a natural strategy to that. If we're in developed neighborhoods versus, breakout neighborhoods, right? Sure. Breakout neighborhoods, it's like, let's think of having AT&T in your cell phone and Verizon, right? If you have AT&T and Verizon and you don't really understand, and you're going to say, why am I going to change to AT&T? It's going to be a large battle. That's kind of the developed market situation. You have to kind of.
So you're opening up in like down in a nice area of like New York City, Manhattan. You're going to go. That's more the developed market, and then the other market is nice upper middle income in Orlando or Dallas or some growth market.
Exactly.
Is that it?
Exactly. So in a market like, let's talk about New York. We're looking at Long Island City to open a school there, right? Okay. It's kind of a tricky situation because when we looked at it, we see the outflows of people in New York. Obviously, the school's not open now. The school will be open in 18 months or
Sure.
14 months. So at that stage, we look at COVID, right? Where are we going to be at COVID? Do we believe that this pandemic will somewhat be curtailed, right? And how would that impact the schools and education on that side and the migration of people back towards Long Island City, right? So we looked at that, and more importantly, we look at competition.
Sure.
Right. So what is the quality of the schools around that area? And how do our proposition compare to others, right? And then that's where we see where the value is. Obviously, we're owners owner of the brand, so I'm going to say, I believe ours is better, but we are focused on STEAM, science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. That's the core concept, and we do have an emotional intelligence program that we partner up with which some guys from Yale, and I think that that's our focus, is educating these kids. We're not in the business just to grow to make money. We really want to make an impact, and I think with that, when we look at New York City and Long Island City, we definitely see a potential for our brand there. And that's why we're looking at, despite what's happening right now, we have to time things, we have to look at competition, we have to look at pricing. There's a number of factors demographically that we have to look at, but we do long studies to assess that.
And before we get more into Amazing Explorers Academy, what are the returns like in your industry?
Okay, so I can tell you, in the industry, they are, as I said, you're looking at, $55 billion industry with profits of 5.2 billion. They're running about 9.5%. There definitely was a decrease from the last few years. If you look a couple of years ago, the margins, instead of 9.5%, what they are now, they were about 14%. Right. Obviously, COVID had a huge impact, and there was a large number of schools which were not prepared, mostly the mom and pops, right, that were not structured properly, or
I talked to one recently in the Miami area. Their enrollment was down 40%, and they're just getting slammed.
Yeah, that was average, was about 40%, but a lot of them couldn't withstand the turmoil. They weren't prepared financially. They never, a lot of these mom and pops are spending 100% of the money every month. They live paycheck to paycheck, and they never really think of,
preparing for a rainy day, right?
Budgeting. Yeah, let's see some form of budgeting. Let's put some form of budgeting practice, best practices, So that's we spend a lot of time thinking about and how to implement that, from technology to everything in our business, and that's what we proposed in all our schools. It's a pretty much cookie cutter format, so that we're standardized. There are no idiosyncrasies in one of the schools, or any of the units.
So besides the STEAM program and the focus on that, what also differentiates you from some of these very large early childhood education brands that might be publicly traded or have like 400 locations across the U.S.?
Yeah, so I think STEAM is a big differential that we started prior to everyone. Actually, we were somewhat of the pioneers.
You taught me what the word meant. I think it was like 4 years ago.
Yeah, science, technology.
I had heard of STEM, but never STEAM.
They had STEM. Yeah, and the arts component is extremely important, and that's something I would like to, just tell you about. I think it's important for everyone to know. The art component came up on our research because the United States was falling behind in terms of math and science. So we did some research. We found that that about when students reach third grade, about 1/3 of the kids lost interest in science. And then by the time they reach high school, about 40% of the kids were not prepared for college level math. And about 30% of them were not prepared for science. And we found out that a lot of it has to do with creativity. And now we move a little bit backwards, is how do you kill creativity? By standardized testing, by memorization, by other methods which are not positive or constructive for your brain. And that's known today in neuroscience. That's why we have games and fun ways of learning things rather than drilling something. So I think in our brand, we're extremely innovative, right? We're extremely focused on STEAM and emotional intelligence. That's our core, and that's what you're going to need for the 21st century. We're continuously evolving. We have greater transparency. Our schools have videos, a lot of glass, so you can see visibility through everything. So we also, if you look at the architecture, we're not a little daycare house. We're a science center. It is like if we thought about it since the beginning, it's like we had the architects thinking about, psychologists and architects saying, okay, you need something that's inviting for the children. So in the front of the school, it's all glass. There's a multi-purpose room with some have spaceships, some have other attractive features where these kids learn to entice the kids to go in, and not a little door with a little window and etc. We thought of everything from beginning to end before we ventured in our expansion phase.
Talking a little bit about the facility. So I understand most centers have 100 to 200 students. That's some of the very large franchise brands. How's the capacity for Amazing Explorers Academy? Because I understand it becomes a lot more profitable closer you get to 200.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Most of these larger franchise brands, they're running around the 150, 200 range. You hardly see a school with 400, 500. I haven't seen one yet. They all run into that capacity for a number of factors, but we have prototypes. And as you go from the urban to the suburban, the numbers change, right? Obviously.
Okay.
Like Long Island City, you're talking about 140 students. Our models in Florida, they all carry 200 capacity.
Oh, okay.
So it's around
how much per student when you look at Florida compared to like Long Island City?
Yeah, so it's bizarre, but it goes along with pricing as well. But there's some advantages. In Florida, the average is about $1,000 a month per child, full-time student. In Long Island City, it's about $3,000.
That's the industry average or Amazing Explorers?
Well, the top tiered programs are around that much, or a little bit more, or slightly less.
Yeah.
Right. And New York City is $3,000.
Huh.
Yeah.
Long Island City, $3,000 a month.
Yeah.
That's wild.
Like a couple years ago, you would look at New York City, and you could have some programs at $5,000. Right. Okay. So the costs are more because the real estate's more and etc. But there's some advantages because, the real estate cost could be twice, but, your employee cost is a little bit more, but in the end, your tuition could be 3 times more. So there's some advantages for margin if we analyze it closely, and we do a lot of that. Like we do a lot of due diligence to make sure that we'll hit our desired margins.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
And then how many jobs per location? From Visa Franchise, we have some folks that are applying for different types of visas, but for them, as well as American investors, some of them want to know, like, how many people are going to be managing at the end of the day.
Yeah. So, I would say that we have capacities, different capacities. If you go from a school of 100 kids to a school of 200 kids, right?
Sure.
200 kids, which is our norm, employs about 40 people. Right. So it's a lot of jobs. And going back to what I was saying is like the schools are not larger because it's a lot to deal with 200 children already. It's I think it's the optimal size, for chaos.
That makes sense. And then in terms of your brand, I know that you've opened up different opportunities, but you have one that a franchisee coming in can develop and own the land and the physical property that the preschool sits in. And then another one would be the built to suit BTS model. Mm-hmm. Could you talk a little bit about these two models?
Yeah. So when we look at a project, there's, those are the two types you can. So if you're going to Long Island City, you can't buy the building. You have to naturally you have to lease or rent the location. A lot of times what we do as the brand is we try to negotiate a pricing for a turnkey solution for the franchisee or for the project, right? So when the landlord gives you a lease, that lease already incorporates everything you need into the school except the FF&E. So that takes about a year, 12 months to develop because the building is there. All you need is to really build is a retrofit So for the grounds up, it's a little bit different. We have to identify the land, which we do a lot of demographic work, using a lot of tools, mobile data, everything. And we look at these things and have to, literally, they take a little bit longer, from anywhere minimum 14 months to 18 months to develop a site. I think that, it really depends. The capital requirement to do a BTS obviously is lower than one to own the real estate, because you're renting something, you don't have to buy it. So I would say it's, it's half, 50%. So you're talking about, a project, and this is standardized. If you look at the major brands, you're talking someone that wants to own the land and do the whole project. They're going to spend anywhere from, depending where, 800,000 to $1 million too. And the guys that are doing
in cash.
Yes, investments. Because these projects, naturally, the build to suit, the grounds up could be a $3-4 million project with the building.
And then the rest, generally, they do SBA financing?
Yes, we are approved by the SBA. We have our FDD with the SBA. It's 100% approved. And so naturally, with the SBA, you might be able to put a lower percentage down, right? As you know,
it's generally 30%, but I've seen some as low as 15%.
Yeah, I seen 10, 15. Yeah, I seen 10, 15. So if you're doing a $4 million project, you're talking about, it could be $400,000 or $500,000, which could be very viable if they qualify for that. Obviously, that's a decision of the SBA and their.
And then do you disclose like the performance, like in terms of EBITDA, or basically what the owner's going to make from their investment?
So we cannot, by law.
Yeah.
We can give them general market figures, and they can do their research, or hire someone to do the research for them, right?
Do you guys still disclose in your FDD the financials for one of the corporate locations?
We did. We have the item 19 of the FDD discloses the financial information, and you can get some, you can run some parallels to that.
Sure.
But it's quite if you look at the profit margins of the industry, this is how I would look at it in a very simple manner. You look at the profit margins of the industry. I said the whole market's running about 10%.
10%.
If you operate well, I would guess you can make, probably 15, 20% net profit margin. So if you're making, if these schools if you're charging a student $1,000 and you have 200 students, that's $200,000 a month, right? 2.4 million in the end, you might be making 10 to 20%. That's a real rough and simple way to think about it. How well you operate.
10% on the low end, and then you go all the way up to 20% if it's really well optimized.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen better than 20%, but you have to operate well and make sure you're, hands-on the school, But
and what would you do, looking between the build to suit versus actually owning the real estate?
Well, you mean my suggestion for someone that would
like the prospective franchisee, or if you were in the franchisee shoes?
Well, what I would do is I would try to see where the financing is. I would think of both. I would say, okay, if I do a BTS, what are my costs? If I go to the SBA, what's going to be my capital required, right? So as we said, if I need, $400,000 or $500,000 to do a BTS cash, to have some cash, and if I need 400 to build and have the real estate, I would do the real estate. It's a no-brainer, right? So it really depends on a little bit of research, and we can help with that. I mean, we have some SBA people. I think you guys probably have some too.
Yeah, we have some great contacts.
And those are the people you would go to. It's very simple. You send them the documentation. We have the whole entire project, and it's just a matter of underwriting to make a decision.
And then, tell me a little bit about what regions. So we're both based in Florida. We're here in Miami. You're in Orlando. I visited a couple of your sites in Central Florida. But tell me a little bit about what markets you're currently in and where you want to grow.
Yeah. So we're in Florida right now, as you said. Like, there's a school opening in Texas very shortly, and
Where in Texas again?
I think it's Austin,
Okay, yeah.
close to Austin. Yeah. So we really have to understand. It's important to understand the trends propelled by COVID, right? What's happening to the states today? People are working remotely. There's a huge dependence on technology. So what we've seen is a very clear migration from, let's say, roughly speaking, from the north to the south, or from the west to Texas and to Florida and to North Carolina and to Georgia.
Smaller cities too.
Yeah. So to understand that, that's how we, so this serious migration is an important factor where we're going to place these schools, right? And it's evident that Florida, North Carolina, Georgia, and these other states are benefiting from these moves. I mean, you've seen Goldman Sachs might be moving their whole entire asset management division to Palm Beach or West Palm Beach, right? I mean, it makes a quarter of the profits of Goldman. So, I mean, it's some. I mean, that's very important. You can be talking about a lot of people. Goldman employs about 40,000 people today. Could be a significant move. So, I mean, all these locations I mentioned, these states I mentioned, are benefiting from this change in trend. So we're trying to position ourselves properly in places that are going to be easy for us, right? Naturally, I don't want to build something in, I don't know, in Alaska or I don't know,
Hawaii.
Hawaii. I mean, even Long Island City is tough, but it's kind of a different situation where we're negotiating a lease that could have a lot of value for a long term. So it really depends. I mean, it's all a matter of due diligence and assessing everything. So, but naturally, North Carolina, Georgia, and Florida are close reach, and it's easy for us to, an hour away flights to be there and to have our people flying back and forth if needed until we establish a team in these locations, right?
And what type of franchisee are you looking for? I understand you first started more with growing corporate locations for a few years, and then now you're bringing on franchisees. What's the ideal franchisee?
So, all of the things that we're doing right now, I say all, are joint ventures, corporate locations, right? We are starting to, obviously, to speak to franchisees and see opportunities where they would fit. The franchisee, I mean, basically what a franchisee is doing, what we've seen is they're purchasing a job, right? So in reality, us having schools that we can sell that are operating at lower risk, they're already making money, will be an option. And we could be developing, we could have, 10 to 20 of these. On the other hand, there will be franchisees that are entrepreneurs, right?
Sure.
Those are the people that are, I think they're interesting, people that understand about research.
Develop a couple of schools, right?
Yeah, I mean, like a area development or something like that. But a franchisee is basically someone that, we would look at someone that has an entrepreneurial skills, good in research, good in people, right? You're managing people, you're dealing with people. So your emotional skills are important. Your management skills are important. You need to be flexible for the training to understand how you need to implement the programs and everything. And so, basically someone that has experience. I wouldn't say you're going to get a kid out of college and start a franchise. I think it's a little bit off, but I'd say people, professionals, there's a wide range.
Sure. And is there a minimum like net worth and then capital requirement that you would look for in a prospective franchisee?
That's a very good question. And it fluctuates because if I
Depends,
were,
like in the area too, right?
yeah, so I mean, if I was a franchisee and I went to the SBA and I applied to buy and build a ground location, and they said, this guy has a great resume, we're gonna approve him. I mean, you could have, I don't know, 500 grand, of net
Mm-hmm.
worth. It depends on the SBA's underwriting, who's underwriting. It really depends. Now, when you do a BTS, the person that is buying the land, building the building, and spending all that money, he will want some form of, structure, some form of guarantees. Normally, he requires someone with about $1 million in net worth, right? So
Okay.
we have a bunch of partners that do that we qualified. We also negotiate to make sure that the lease rates are proper, because in the end, this is a franchise. We need to maintain the health of our franchisees, that they're making money, that the margins are hitting properly.
Have you ever closed the location?
No, never.
Oh, okay.
Far away from, thank God.
Great.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, COVID was a tough time. We got,
So tell me a little bit about how Amazing Explorers has adapted with COVID. And we had talked about 40% decrease in enrollments with a lot of your competitors, but what have you seen with the Amazing Explorer locations?
that's about right. When COVID hit in the end of March, it was a panic attack, right?
Sure.
Nobody wanted to go anywhere. It was like, let's hide. But throughout the months, we not only recuperated what we had lost, and we exceeded what we had done in the same time frame.
Huh.
We did open a school 3 months ago, right, during COVID, and we were profitable on the first month of operation.
No way. Wow.
That is like incredible. That's really, like, I thank my team and the people involved, because without them, like, they really figured out how to live and how to operate during COVID, difficult times. So I think I think COVID was is a terrible experience for all of us, but we try to absorb the best of it, is saying, like, we've been challenged and we were forced to learn how to operate and how to do things in a very difficult environment.
For sure. Have you seen any studies, like in terms of like the emotional and intellectual capability and of the kids that are basically are not doing anything and aren't socializing, compared to the ones that continue in preschool and receiving education?
Well, Amazing Explorers is a very new program, right? We really started in 2014, but the school started a little bit later. We definitely relied on the studies that I mentioned before, from James Heckman, from Cornell University, Frank Porter, and these things that have shown a significant, positives to these kids. They analyze kids, 10, 20 years later. So, I mean, it's incredible how important it is to put your child in an early learning program that's structured, not just a daycare and keep the kid in there. Obviously, not all programs are the same, right? And if you look at what's happening in the world, you're definitely seeing that there is a necessity for STEAM. Look at Elon Musk, right? Today, anyone that looks at Elon Musk today says he really stands out as a creator, innovator, someone that breaks barriers, right?
For sure.
He's probably he's probably the number one. I mean, he's probably the number one or top innovator in the world today, right? So now what you have to think of is we need to create Elon Musks for the future. And not Elon Musk. When I mean that, I mean people that are better than what Elon Musk is today, because the future is going to be dramatically changed. Less 100 years, we looked at linear growth. Today, we're looking at exponential growth. And this has never happened before. So for that, we need to prepare our kids to face what they're going to face in the next 10, 20 years. 100% of the jobs are going to be gone. And it's not going to be gone like the other revolutions. It's going to be drastically gone. I mean, people have to have the skills to be prepared for the future. And now we go back to, we need to wire these kids properly. And that starts at an early age.
So you mentioned the emotional intelligence, and then on the science and tech side, could you elaborate a little more?
Yeah. So we have our programs are focused on the standardized curriculum, obviously, or else I can't do what Elon Musk did and create his own school and do whatever curriculum he wanted. But they also are enhanced by STEAM for science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. So it's kind of an enrichment program around the core program, right? So for that, in the beginning of the conversation, I said that we had architects, psychologists, everyone thinking about it. We created a room that's only for that. It's called the multi-purpose room. It's called the STEAM room, right? Where the kids go in and they get a full hands-on exposure to STEAM. And every school, it's very important. Like every school of our schools, Amazing Explorers, has a director, a director that takes care of the school, an education director, and it has a STEAM a person, kind of a director that really is focused on STEAM, because we need to make sure that we're providing that education to the kids at its fullest potential.
Marcelo, so concluding thoughts. I mean, you said it well in terms of not linear growth, but it's going to be exponential for the coming years, and our kids need to be prepared for that. Any other closing thoughts you might have?
Yeah, I mean, the interesting. I mean, I just want to conclude with thinking about vetted business, us, and the kids in the future. The preschool business, when you look at it, it's kind of a bricks and mortar business. Everyone, as you said, is investing in ed tech and the technology oriented education and other segments like that. I feel that as being part of this business and being completely entrenched in the business, that it will take a long time for something to drastically happen in this small little niche business. Why? When we look at this trend about online learning, and you have kids in elementary school, middle school, high school, this has sometimes worked, sometimes not. It never worked for preschools. Never, ever. It's impossible. You get a 2-year-old or a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old or a 4-week.
I heard they can focus for 2 minutes on a screen.
It's impossible. You won't be able to work. You will be working with the kids, and you probably don't have the skills necessary to teach that kid, or you won't know how to follow the curriculum, prepare for the curriculum, etc. So you
gotta probably have another job too. You're focused on.
Yeah, exactly. It's impossible to do another job. So concluding our discussion here is, it's still a very viable business. It's still a very important business for the future of this country and for the kids, the whole spectrum, right? And it's still a very valuable business and lucrative business, because we need it, sure. and the drivers and the drivers are there. These drivers are there. More women are going to work. More funding is going to go into education. We need more and more education. We have 4 million births a year. We have to, create space for these kids to learn. We have to create schools and etc. So I think it's just, it's definitely where
you struck at a point for us. Like, it's a necessary good that, you have renewable revenue in terms of getting the payment every month. And I've brought on I've brought on other franchisors in the insurance space, barbershops. And I definitely think there is a strong parallel with what you're doing at Amazing Explorers Academy and that renewable necessary need.
Yeah, our revenues are extremely recurring. That's
Yeah,
very important.
and you can,
And yeah, it's for
you
us.
can forecast, you can plan opening up another one when you have that constant revenue base.
Yeah, it's definitely expendable.
Well, it's great, Marcel. Thanks so much for joining today. For those that are participating, or if you're listening to a recorded version on our podcast or on YouTube or another channel, I'm going to leave the contact information so you can enter into contact with Marcelo. And then the process, a member from his team will send additional information about franchise opportunities with Amazing Explorers Academy and see if it's a good fit for you investing in this early childhood education opportunity. Again, it was a pleasure to have on Marcelo, the principal co-founder at Amazing Explorers Academy. If you found this informative, share it with your friends, like us on social media like YouTube, LinkedIn, and hope you enjoyed this video and recording. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Patrick.
Appreciate it.